Hey there, friends. Buckle up for an incredible, heartwarming tale that'll tug at your heartstrings and leave you inspired. This is the story of a young hero, a life-changing flight, and a request so profound it brought a millionaire to tears. Picture this: a transatlantic journey at 35,000 feet, where lives intertwine in the most unexpected way, breaking down barriers of class, race, and privilege. Get ready for a captivating ride filled with courage, compassion, and connections that change everything. If you love stories that remind us of the power of humanity, don't forget to subscribe and join our community of storytellers. 8 hours before the drama unfolded, Richard Harrington stepped out of his sleek black Bentley onto the rain-slicked pavement outside JFK's International Terminal. His Italian leather shoes, worth more than some folks' weekly paychecks, gleamed under the airport lights. At 58, Richard carried the confidence of a man who'd built a financial empire from the ground up. A man used to doors swinging wide open at his approach, and they always did. Today, though, his wealth felt like a hollow shield as he gently guided his pregnant wife, Catherine, from the car. "Easy now, sweetheart," he said softly, his arm protectively around her waist. At 43, Catherine was radiant, her pregnancy giving her an ethereal glow that softened her sharp features. Her blonde hair framed a face that had graced charity gala photos for years. But today, worry lines creased her forehead. "I'm fine, Richard," Catherine insisted, her hand resting on her rounded belly. "Dr. Winters said it's perfectly safe to fly in the second trimester. The London conference is important, and I want to be there when you get that Humanitarian Financier of the Year award." Richard nodded, but his eyes betrayed his concern. After 3 miscarriages and years of fertility treatments, this pregnancy was a miracle at 28 weeks. They were finally daring to hope. First class all the way, private car waiting in London, and a doctor on call, Richard recited, as much to reassure himself as Catherine. She rolled her eyes affectionately. "You've thought of everything, as always. That's why they're giving you that award, isn't it?" Meanwhile, a yellow taxi pulled up a few cars back, and out stepped Elijah Williams, a lanky 17-year-old with a battered backpack slung over his shoulder. He winced as he handed over nearly all his cash to the driver. $20 left for emergencies, as his grandmother had insisted. "You're gonna knock their socks off, baby," Beatrice Williams had told him that morning, her gnarled hands straightening his collar despite her trembling fingers. At 73, Beatrice was Elijah's rock, even with the oxygen tube trailing her and medications eating up her fixed income. "Those doctors in that fancy London program are gonna see what I've always seen in you." Elijah had nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He didn't tell her the Young Medical Achievers International program only offered a partial scholarship. The rest, airfare, accommodations, meals, came from years of saved birthday money, part-time jobs, and the small life insurance policy his mom left when she passed from breast cancer 3 years ago. This trip was everything. His future, his dreams, his chance to lift his grandmother out of their 1-bedroom Harlem apartment with its unreliable heat and broken elevator. As Elijah entered the bustling terminal, his heart raced with excitement and terror. He'd never flown, never left New York. Yet here he was, heading to a program that accepted only 50 students worldwide. His AP biology teacher's recommendation letter called him a once-in-a-generation talent, with an intuitive grasp of human physiology. What it didn't mention was how that knowledge was forged in necessity. Elijah had been Beatrice's caregiver, learning to monitor her COPD, spot early signs of heart failure, and manage her complex medications. By 16, he could take vitals like a pro and knew every drug contraindication in their bathroom cabinet. Navigating the crowded terminal, Elijah noticed the subtle shifts: security guards' eyes tracking him, mothers pulling their kids closer. He was used to this quiet bias, but today it stung. Today was about possibility, about being seen for his mind, not his worn jeans and faded hoodie. Lost in thought, he nearly bumped into a luggage cart, then caught sight of Richard and Catherine at the first-class check-in, staff jumping to attention. Elijah turned to the long economy line, unaware their paths would soon collide in a life-altering way. In the premium lounge, Richard scrolled through emails while Catherine flipped through a pregnancy magazine. Braxton Hicks again, she murmured, pressing a hand to her side. They're more frequent lately. Richard looked up, alarmed. Should we call Dr. Winters? Catherine smiled. It's normal, Richard. My body's just practicing. He nodded reluctantly, returning to his emails, though his focus stayed on her. His Harrington Financial Group was finalizing a medical center in Rwanda, the project earning him that humanitarian award. What started as a tax strategy had become meaningful, especially with Catherine's passion for it. Across the terminal, Elijah stood in the boarding line, reviewing medical flashcards. Pulmonary embolism, he whispered. Symptoms: sudden shortness of breath, chest pain, rapid heart rate. He flipped to the next card, oblivious that this knowledge would soon save a life. The boarding process highlighted their worlds divide. The Harringtons settled into first-class pods with champagne and sparkling water, while Elijah squeezed into a middle-economy seat between a snoring businessman and an elderly woman. As the plane soared into the night sky, none could predict how their worlds would collide at 35,000 feet, where assumptions would be shattered. For hours in, the cabin was dim, the engine's hum lulling most to sleep. Elijah, too wired about his London interview, stood in the galley, stretching and reviewing notes. You should get some sleep, honey, said Gloria, a kind-eyed flight attendant. Long flight ahead. Elijah smiled. Yes, ma'am. Just nervous. First time flying. Gloria chuckled. A transatlantic doozy for your first. Where you headed? London, ma'am. Interviewing for a medical program. Her expression shifted to warm approval. Well, that's something. My grandson's your age, only cares about video games. A call light interrupted, and she winked. Duty calls. First class wants more champagne. Back in first class, Catherine shifted uncomfortably, a tightness in her chest she hadn't felt before. Richard, she whispered. I'm feeling breathless. Richard pressed the call button, his calm voice masking panic. Let's get you some water. Gloria arrived, her smile faltering at Catherine's pallor. Mrs. Harrington, are you okay? Catherine paused, a sharp pain cutting her words. Trouble. Catching my breath. Gloria checked her pulse, her face serious. How far along are you? 28 weeks, Richard answered, voice tight. Gloria moved swiftly. I'll get the first aid kit and check for a doctor. Try to relax, Mrs. Harrington. As Gloria made a discreet announcement for medical help, Catherine's breathing grew labored, sweat beading on her forehead. Richard, something's wrong. The baby, she gasped. Richard's composure cracked. Help! My wife needs help. The cry woke passengers, including Elijah, who overheard whispers, pregnant woman, breathing problems. The symptoms hit him like a bolt: shortness of breath, chest pain, pregnancy. His grandmother had a pulmonary embolism last year, and pregnancy raised the risk fivefold. Doubt gripped him. Who'd listen to a teenager? But the urgent calls pushed him to act. Standing, Elijah raised his hand. I'm not a doctor, but I might know what's happening. The flight attendant barely glanced at him. We need a professional, young man. It could be a pulmonary embolism, Elijah insisted. Pregnancy increases the risk. Is she gasping? Swelling in one leg? The attendant paused, surprised by his confidence. An urgent call from first class decided it. Come with me, she said briskly. But if you're wrong, I pray I am, Elijah replied, following her, feeling skeptical eyes on him. In first class, chaos reigned. Catherine's ashen face and shallow breaths alarmed everyone. Richard hovered, helpless, as Gloria struggled with an oxygen mask. Who's this? Richard demanded, eyeing Elijah's hoodie and youth. No doctor on board, sir, the attendant explained. This young man says he knows something. Richard's eyes narrowed, his snap judgment clear. He wouldn't trust this kid with a coffee order, let alone his wife's life. But desperation won. What's wrong with her? He demanded. Elijah swallowed, pushing past the skepticism. Sir, I think it's a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in her lungs. Pregnancy increases the risk, especially on flights. And you know this how? Richard's voice dripped suspicion. I care for my grandmother with COPD and heart failure. I've studied medicine since I was 12. Elijah turned to Catherine. Ma'am, any pain or swelling in one leg? She nodded weakly. Left calf. Since yesterday. Thought it was normal. Elijah faced Gloria. Elevate her legs, keep the oxygen on. Give her an aspirin if you have it. It's a blood thinner. Check for heparin in the kit. Gloria nodded, moving quickly, while Richard watched, stunned, as this teenager took charge with calm authority. The clot likely formed in her leg, Elijah explained, keeping Catherine calm. It can travel to the lungs. Aspirin helps stop it growing until we get to a hospital. Richard's disbelief softened to wonder. How do you know this? Because I had to, Elijah said simply. My grandmother depends on me. As the captain announced an emergency landing in Iceland, Catherine's breathing eased slightly, but the baby's heart rate raced on the fetal monitor. Elijah stayed by her side, monitoring vitals, calming her with a gentle smile. My grandma says panic uses oxygen we can't spare. Let's stay calm together. You, me, and your baby. Richard watched, grappling with gratitude and shame. He'd dismissed Elijah based on appearance, yet this young man was saving his family. What's your name? He asked, voice rough. Elijah Williams, sir. Thank you, Elijah, Richard said, the words too small for the moment. Don't thank me yet, Elijah replied. She needs a hospital soon. The plane landed in Reykjavik, and Catherine was rushed to Landspítali University Hospital. Doctors confirmed Elijah's diagnosis, a pulmonary embolism, complicated by pregnancy. The aspirin and oxygen had likely saved her life. In the sterile waiting room, Richard and Elijah sat on plastic chairs, the divide between them fading. You should rest, Richard said, noting Elijah's fatigue. I want to know she's okay, Elijah replied. Richard nodded, moved by his selflessness. Tell me about this London program. Elijah's eyes lit up. Young medical achievers, 50 students worldwide, full scholarships for the top 10. Interviews were today. Guess I missed it. Richard frowned. Because of us. Elijah shrugged. Some things matter more. Learning about Elijah's grandmother, her COPD, heart failure, and arthritis. Richard saw a young man who'd shouldered adult burdens early. I've been unfair to you, he admitted. On the plane, I know what you saw, sir, Elijah said quietly. I'm used to it. Before Richard could respond, a doctor called them to Catherine's room. She was pale but breathing easier, monitors beeping steadily. My heroes, she said warmly. Elijah, you recognized what no one else could. He ducked his head. Anyone with the knowledge would have done it, ma'am. But no one else had it, she insisted, squeezing his hand. Richard arranged hotel rooms for stranded passengers, ensuring Elijah had one. The next morning, over coffee in the hotel cafe, Richard broached compensation. You're owed something for what you lost. Elijah's eyes hardened. I'm not owed anything, Mr. Harrington. I did what was right. Richard backtracked. Not payment, recognition of your talent. I have connections, resources. I want to invest in your future as a doctor. Elijah hesitated, hope flickering. That's generous, but there's something else. Not for me, for my grandmother. Richard leaned forward. What about her? She needs better care. Our insurance barely covers basics, and specialists don't take Medicaid. If you want to help, that'd mean more than any scholarship. Richard was floored. He'd expected a personal request, not this selfless plea. Of course, I'll arrange the best specialists for her. Elijah shook his head. It's not just her. Our community clinic is understaffed, underfunded. People like my grandma struggle. Medication costs, no transportation. As Elijah spoke passionately about Harlem's healthcare gaps, Richard felt his worldview shift. The Rwanda project was vital, but need existed right in New York, too. What would make a difference? He asked. Elijah outlined a vision. A funded clinic, specialists who cared, transportation for the elderly, medication support. That's big picture stuff, he said, almost apologetically. Maybe it shouldn't be, Richard replied, a plan forming. Back at the hospital, Catherine was thrilled by Richard's idea for a Harlem health initiative. It's perfect, not just for Elijah, but for us, for our baby. Privilege comes with responsibility. Elijah arrived with a gift shop bouquet, shyly presenting it to Catherine. My grandma says never visit a hospital empty-handed. As they discussed the initiative, Richard proposed a paid advisory role for Elijah, plus a medical school scholarship and care for Beatrice. Why would you do this? Elijah asked, voice thick. You don't know me. Richard met his gaze. Because you showed moral courage. I misjudged you, and that could have cost me everything. You've made us rethink our legacy. Elijah smiled faintly. My grandma says God puts people in your path for a reason. She'd want to meet you first, though. She's old school. Catherine laughed. We'd be honored. As plans took shape for the Harlem Community Health Initiative, Richard confessed his initial prejudice to Elijah. I didn't trust you at first. I'm sorry. Elijah's response was simple. Ignorance can be fixed with knowledge, if you're willing to learn. Seems like you are. The words, offered without judgment, brought tears to Richard's eyes. 2 weeks later, Richard and Catherine visited Beatrice's Harlem apartment, climbing 5 flights due to the broken elevator. Beatrice, oxygen tubes in place, greeted them warmly but directly. So, you're the airplane people. Over cornbread and sweet potato pie, she grilled Richard on the initiative. Why Harlem? She asked. Richard admitted, Elijah made me see what I'd ignored. Your grandson didn't just save my family. He changed how I see the world. Beatrice laughed. Honesty at last. I can work with that. She approved the plan, insisting it involve community leaders and be long-term. 6 months later, the Harlem Community Health Initiative opened, its plaque quoting Beatrice. The Lord puts knowledge where it's needed. Inside, residents found dignified care from staff who understood them. Elijah, now in Columbia's pre-med program, coordinated community needs, his leadership thriving. Across town, Catherine cradled newborn Beatrice Elizabeth Harrington, named for Elijah's grandmother and his late mother. Beatrice, brought by private car, cooed over her namesake, while Elijah, named Godfather, beamed. This wasn't just a clinic. It was a bridge across divides, built on a chance encounter at 35,000 feet. Elijah's request wasn't for himself but for his community's dignity, a gift that transformed Richard's life as much as it did Harlem's. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you. Let's keep spreading stories of connection and hope. Back at the hospital, Catherine was thrilled by Richard's idea for a Harlem health initiative. It's perfect, not just for Elijah, but for us, for our baby. Privilege comes with responsibility. Elijah arrived with a gift shop bouquet, shyly presenting it to Catherine. My grandma says never visit a hospital empty-handed. As they discussed the initiative, Richard proposed a paid advisory role for Elijah, plus a medical school scholarship and care for Beatrice. Why would you do this? Elijah asked, voice thick. You don't know me. Richard met his gaze. Because you showed moral courage. I misjudged you, and that could have cost me everything. You've made us rethink our legacy. Elijah smiled faintly. My grandma says God puts people in your path for a reason. She'd want to meet you first, though. She's old school. Catherine laughed. We'd be honored. As plans took shape for the Harlem Community Health Initiative, Richard confessed his initial prejudice to Elijah. I didn't trust you at first. I'm sorry. Elijah's response was simple. Ignorance can be fixed with knowledge, if you're willing to learn. Seems like you are. The words, offered without judgment, brought tears to Richard's eyes. 2 weeks later, Richard and Catherine visited Beatrice's Harlem apartment, climbing 5 flights due to the broken elevator. Beatrice, oxygen tubes in place, greeted them warmly but directly. So, you're the airplane people. Over cornbread and sweet potato pie, she grilled Richard on the initiative. Why Harlem? She asked. Richard admitted, Elijah made me see what I'd ignored. Your grandson didn't just save my family. He changed how I see the world." Beatrice laughed. "Honesty at last. I can work with that." She approved the plan, insisting it involve community leaders and be long-term. 6 months later, the Harlem Community Health Initiative opened, its plaque quoting Beatrice. "The Lord puts knowledge where it's needed." Inside, residents found dignified care from staff who understood them. Elijah, now in Columbia's pre-med program, coordinated community needs, his leadership thriving. Across town, Catherine cradled newborn Beatrice Elizabeth Harrington, named for Elijah's grandmother and his late mother. Beatrice, brought by private car, cooed over her namesake, while Elijah, named Godfather, beamed. This wasn't just a clinic. It was a bridge across divides, built on a chance encounter at 35,000 feet. Elijah's request wasn't for himself but for his community's dignity, a gift that transformed Richard's life as much as it did Harlem's. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you. Let's keep spreading stories of connection and hope.